we are joined by the recently reelected Congressman from California's 22nd District, Representative David Valadao. Representative, how are you doing this morning? I know it's been an interesting week. You had to wait for those votes to be counted, but like you told me, you've had to wait longer in the past.
Yeah, no, and knowing this fast and having this size of margin was a big positive for us. We knew we were in a good spot on election day. We were expecting it to take at least 2 weeks, and the race got called in just right at a week.
And stuff that you've been talking to me about this whole time, which are the issues that are facing your district, which were issues on the economy, issues on immigration. They're nationwide issues, but obviously by each congressional district in every different state, you have different issues that or different nuances to the issue. Did you think that your performance and performance by Republicans across the country were indicative of maybe sticking to those two issues, or is every district kind of unique? And in this situation, you were really focused on what you were doing here locally?
Well, yes, a little bit of everything. There's no magic sauce to anything. Every district is a little bit different, but specifically in the 22nd congressional district, people were struggling. California makes problems a little bit more difficult because energy costs are so much more in California. Housing is so much more, and it really hammered home. But across the nation, yes, the cost of living, interest rates, cost of housing. All those things played a role in why I think Republicans did so well at the presidential level, the Senate level, and even the House level, being able to keep the House, which most folks out were thinking we were going to lose the House. Even some of my colleagues thought we were going to lose the House. I think we did well because people want change from these past 4 years. And I think for years to come, for decades, the Biden years are going to be referred to the same way when I grew up. People used to talk about the Carter years, and I think the Biden years are going to be a thing.
Is that always tough though, being the incumbent and when the economy's tough? I know people they can look right to the top up as from the White House administration, but they can also look right to you too, being an incumbent and being there for so long.
That's a fair comment. And I think we've done a good enough a job in my office making sure that people knew what I was doing, our weekly emails, our teletown halls, everything we do for outreach, my staff that helps communicate throughout the district, what we put on social media, the comments that I'm making on the floor, the votes that I'm taking. I mean, all those things are things that I was able to reference to differentiate myself from the Biden administration and my opponent in this race because people knew the things that I was pushing for, the things I was fighting for, was to bring more of their dollars back to our community, but also make their lives a little bit easier.
And I know, I guess let's just jump in right into what some of those issues are. What are you most looking forward to jumping into this next term? Because it's starting right away. I know you kind of hit the ground running.
Well, I mean, water for us is one that I know this administration is interested in, so hopefully we can work together on that. Public safety, obviously securing the border is something that I think is important to all of us. Pushing back, especially on the cartels and all the drugs and the human trafficking. Those are things that we all support, but making sure we have good common sense trade policy that helps benefit our farmers and our manufacturers here in the U.S., but farmers specifically in the Central Valley. Energy production. I know the state of California is not a fan of producing energy here, but it creates thousands of jobs and brings in lots of revenue for our schools, for our law enforcement, for our roads. Those things are important. And so this administration could be very helpful on that. Those are all things that we're very focused on that we're trying to deliver for our community.
It seems like the president-elect has sort of changed his mind on when it comes to immigration. I know in the past he was looking to really limit immigration coming into the country. Now it seems like he's more open to more people coming into the country, but doing so legally, which it didn't seem like that was the case in his first term. He's had some new advisors, all sorts of things like that. Does this seem like something that you guys can get to work on right away? Because it seems from the outside looking in, he was able to win with more Latino Hispanic voters, people that are more recent arrivals to the United States. And that's been pretty impressive, I think, among the Republican Party and seeing candidates do that like they haven't been able to do in the past.
Well, I do believe that's something we can work on. It's something I'm obviously very supportive of. I've always been supportive of legal immigration, making sure that we have guest worker programs for those who just want to come here and work and go back to their home countries, but also cleaning up the process so people aren't waiting 15 years to go through the process and making sure that we also secure our border. I mean, those are things I think are pretty common sense that the average American does support. And obviously, this administration on securing the border so much stronger than the Biden administration and obviously Kamala Harris under her leadership there on those specific issues. So I do believe it is something we can work together on, and I hope to be able to do that.
Now, as it goes to the House of Representatives, I know you'll have a slim majority like last time. The president-elect's making it maybe even slimmer with a couple of the picks. We want to get your thoughts on just who he's picking out of the out of Congress. What your thoughts are on Matt Gaetz serving as an attorney general if that were to pass through?
Well, I actually don't think Matt Gaetz will make it all the way through. I think he's made too many enemies here in the Senate, and I know the recess appointment is a conversation, but that's a much more complicated path forward than people are making it out to be. I don't see it happening, but it's hard to say. As far as Elise Stefanik as ambassador to the UN, I think she's going to do an amazing job. Mike Waltz is a good personal friend of mine, and I think he's going to do a great job for us over in the administration. And then even my freshman class, Doug Collins, just got picked up yesterday. I think he's going to do a great job. John Ratcliffe, another member that I served with, great member. I think he's going to do a great job. Christy Nome, I think she's going to do a great job for us as well. A couple that I haven't met, the new will be Secretary of Interior, the former governor or current governor, I guess, from South Dakota. I think he's going to do a great job as well. I mean, you've got a lot of great members. I think he's North Dakota. I'm sorry. Um, you've got a lot of great people for this administration that I think will be really good. Lee Zeldin, I served with him. I used to spend Christmas with him when I would go visit troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. He was 101st Airborne, and it was always fun to spend Christmas handing out cigars and thanking our soldiers abroad for their service to our country and taking time away from their families. I'm excited about working with him. So I think the president is surrounding himself with some good people, and I think he's going to do well.
And just a question, a follow-up on that too. Have you spoken with the former speaker on this or anything like that, or is there pretty much a sense of understanding of what's going on into this nomination process through the Senate? Of course, former Speaker McCarthy. Have you had any conversation with him?
No, I haven't talked to him. I think he was traveling abroad over the last week or so. I'm not sure if he's back yet, but I look forward to talking to him soon. Yeah, there's a few former speakers that I do communicate with, so I didn't know which one you're talking about.
Oh no, the one the old next door neighbor in the congressional district. Last few questions for you as well. I just wanted to get into this topic too. I mean, you as you mentioned all these names. What does it say that he's picking a lot of congressional members that maybe have a good ear to the ground? When we think about Lee Zeldin, you think about someone who overperformed in his governor race in New York. For people who just see New York as a deep blue state, I think it was 53-46. He was able to communicate well, and of course, also that election saw a bunch of Republicans elected to the House from New York, about half of them in those tight districts maintaining their posts this time around. And then, of course, too, Kristi Noem was a popular name who was floated as even potentially as a VP pick, and a number of other ones that you mentioned as well. What do you make of House members being chosen for these positions as opposed to maybe industry executives or Washington ties?
Well, I think it helps because it's one thing to just pass things on executive order, and I think presidents have gotten too confident with that. And if you want to have a lasting impact on our country, you have to have the legislative body as part of it. And obviously, the president is going to reverse a lot of the executive orders that Joe Biden put in place that were bad for our economy. And uh, President Trump, I think, is going to want to solidify those. He's going to want to codify them. He's going to want to work through the legislature, and having those people who serve in the legislature have an idea of how the process works and what's possible because they know a lot of our colleagues. What is vital to making sure that we put some policies in place that aren't just reversed every 4 years. I mean, the back and forth that we're seeing with these extreme administrations is not a good way to go. I think our country wants stability. I think our business owners want stability. So when they're making these investments, they know that the money they're spending isn't going to just be pulled out from under them. And you take the pipeline that was started under the Trump administration to move oil south, and Biden just stopped it in its tracks. And there's so many of those types of projects that are beneficial for our country. And I think we've got to find ways to make sure that when a company is willing to put up millions of dollars in investment, that they're able to follow through and actually finish. And I think that's why it's so important to focus on the legislative side and actually get these policies enacted and signed into law.
And I know there's also questions about the budget right now going into this last cycle. What are your thoughts on this, a potential shutdown? I mean, it seems like something that's going to be continue to be avoided. I think people want some sort of a smooth transition, right?
I would hope so. I know that I want to see a smooth transition, obviously being an appropriator, making sure that we get those appropriations bills signed into law. There's still a little bit of a disparity between the House and Senate numbers. Not an official number, but we think it's somewhere in the $100 billion range. I mean, when you look at discretionary spending, it's only about $1.6 trillion out of the 2.6 trillion that we are in deficit spending. And if Trump comes into office in January and then has to go through a period of time where he's got to hire staff, and we're talking thousands of staffers, and build out his administration to get right into the idea that he's going to have to get into a funding fight that's due in, let's say, March, for something that's really only 5 months worth of spending. I don't know if he wants to burn that capital on that or not, but I think they're going down to Mar-a-Lago this weekend. The House and Senate leadership have that dialogue and see what he wants us to do.
And I know you don't like weighing in too much on these little fights that happen, but with Governor Newsom saying he wants to Trump-proof California, and of course, you and a bunch of other House Republicans in California, and of course from other states too, but particularly from California, have made their message clear about disapproval of some of the policies that are coming out of Sacramento and coming out of his office. Is there much that you can do, I guess, to reverse that or to try to combat that to the best of your abilities in Washington? I know oil and gas and then CARB as well. For people who don't know what CARB is, some of the air restrictions and potential increase in gas prices through them as well. There's not much that it seems like you guys can do. Is there any new tools that you guys are trying to find out? I know you're working hard.
I mean, some of our water stuff, there are things we can do, obviously, because some of the projects are owned by the federal government, even though they're in California. There is permitting that we can do on federal lands with moving oil or moving electricity, and there are things that we can do on that front. But there are also things that the state of California is requesting waivers for that have a huge impact on the rest of the nation. That was one of the dialogues I had in committee with Secretary Pete there from Transportation. They're looking for a waiver to basically go with these carbon neutral trains, which pretty much don't exist, and potentially electric trains, which the development isn't there yet. And the idea that we're going to implement regulations that mandate a product that's not even publicly available yet on a private company is something that's going to have a devastating impact on our transportation of goods. 60% of the goods in the nation touch California at one point. And the idea that California's going to have some goofy law trying to mandate something that's not actually there is things that we can push back on. And Gavin Newsom trying to act like he's Mr. Popular. And the piece of legislation he tried to stop, Prop 36, was passed with 70% of Californians supporting it. And when you look at some of the crazy laws that they've passed to make it easier for criminals to get off scot-free, a lot of those are getting reversed. DAs like Gascon down in LA was fired from his job and replaced with Nathan Hochman. I mean, our public safety is something that the rest of the country looks at and says, this is not the direction we want to go. And if Gavin Newsom wants to make life more expensive and more dangerous for our citizens, and that's what he's the flag he's going to plant on the ground, his ambitions in 2028 are not going to go well for him.
Well, until 2028, thank you so much. Appreciate your time as always, and take care. I know you'll be able to sleep well for a couple more days, and I'm sure right back to work.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.